A reading from Kell, Hounds, Ascendant. Written by Michael A. Stackpole. Read by The Dapper Bard. At the tower's base, he ushered her into the main building and slid her head back. She shook her head once, freeing a cascade of golden hair, but still said nothing. He slipped the blue scarf down. Your tongue can't be frozen. His smile returned. But you know, if it is, I can think of a way to warm it up. Veronica pulled her scarf back up over her nose. If it was frozen, Morgan Kell, it would be entirely your fault. Rewarding you with a kiss is not something I would do. Reward? I sought no reward. Morgan shook his head solemnly. I was merely thinking of the medicinal value of a kiss. Nice try, soldier boy. But look, in the future, when I say, no, I really don't want to go outside, take me at my word, okay? She pulled her hands out of the muff, let her oversized mittens fall off, and revealed gloved hands beneath. I am in, count them, 4 layers, and I'm still cold. I'd love to count the layers one by one. Veronica rolled her eyes. You are so hot-blooded. That's why you love me. Do I? Don't you? Should I? Come with me, Veronica. See the Commonwealth and freeze. Morgan slipped his arms around her and pulled her close. I believe I offered other indocuments? This is not the time for logic, Morgan. Oh, right. It's all about you. Exactly. Her eyes flashed warmly, and a finger tugged the scarf down to her chin. I'm cold, and I can't help it unless, you know, I load up on potato pancakes and become a heifer like... Morgan pressed a finger to her lips. Let's not speak ill of our hosts. Veronica had observed, as they came in system, and watched holovision broadcasts, that the image of feminine beauty suggested by the programs was of someone on the stouter side. When Morgan had come to the Noggle Ring, that had taken a bit of getting used to, but the female cadets in the Lyran Commonwealth's State Military Academy were athletic. Other women tended to be softer and curvier, which, according to popular legend and song, made those long winter nights just that much warmer. You're right, of course. It is cold here. I didn't notice it because... Because you're a man and you wouldn't allow yourself to admit it under threat of torture? He raised an eyebrow. That notwithstanding, I spent a lot of time here. We'd march along those walls, keeping watch. We'd drill in those mountains. I mentioned people getting lost up there. We'd help find them. I understand that. She squeezed his arm. And I understand that people love the snow. They love skiing and ski trekking. I like the idea of having skied and sitting down with a hot toddy in front of a blazing fire. He shook his head. And don't get me wrong, Morgan. I love that you want to show me the Noggle Ring. That it was such a big part of your life makes it important to me as well. She smiled softly and looked down the long hallways, fashioned with portraits and plaques, with rooms named after battles, famed mechs, and legendary warriors. I can feel the history here, and you know I appreciate it. Even on Galatea, the Noggle Ring is a name that conjures wonder. If you're betting on a fight, you'd feel more confident if the fighter was a Noggle Ring graduate. If a mercenary company comes recruiting, the N-grads always went first, and you'd expect to see the company again if it was run by N-grads. Grads like you and your brother. Morgan took her by the elbow and led her down one hallway. 20 meters along, a break in the wall opened into a large atrium. 8 meters below them, Steiner Hall's lobby glowed with the light of the setting sun. He led her down a set of stairs to a big trophy case. Look there. Class of 04. First in your class. She gave him a small kiss on his cheek, helping warm it considerably. And a cumulative cadet score there. 905.3. Check them all before that. No one had ever hit that high on the CCS. She glanced at the name. Nor since. Yeah, but look at 09. Patrick Kell, 905.291. Veronica raised an eyebrow. Well matched, the Kell brothers. Morgan shook his head. You look at all the scores that went into that number, and Patrick smoked me fair and square. But how? He took an elective his last year. Music, classical guitar. Scored at 1.8 in it. Brought him down to 905.291. Veronica's eyes narrowed. He did it deliberately? He's played the guitar since he was 4. He won a planetary competition on Ark Royal when he was 10. His ability to play was noted as a positive for selection to the Noggle Ring. Morgan took her hand in his and squeezed. I know you had brothers and sisters, but I only had my brother. I know he looked up to me when we were growing up, but he was my kid brother. You expect that. When I heard about this, well, I mean, I'm proud of what I accomplished here, but... Veronica smiled at him. You're very lucky your brother loves you so much, and he's lucky you love him so much. Shh! No macho posturing. I was there when you heard he was hurt in the Magi raid. Nothing will erase the memory of the abject horror on your face. Morgan kissed the finger she'd pressed to his lips. You know that same look appeared on my face when I heard you'd been injured. Thank you. She squeezed his hand. What else, my dear, did you wish to show me? We could look at my dorm room. Oh, I bet that line warmed the heart of many a lass during your time here. Morgan laughed. Easy way to get tossed. Not to say some didn't risk it, but the honor system didn't reward it. You weren't allowed to have fun? We were, but only certain kinds of fun. They strolled from the lobby to a ramp leading down to the network of tunnels that crisscrossed the campus. Everyone here was training to be an officer, and yes, no wisecracks, a gentleman. No, that wasn't a piece of fan fiction I found online. Those are the skills of a Mr. Michael A. Stackpole circa 2019. That was legitimately published as part of BattleTech. When it comes to Michael Stackpole, I generally forgive the Warrior Trilogy for being only 1.5 worthwhile books. But that was also early in his career. I can generally forgive something for being bad if it's early in someone's career. They're still learning, and BattleTech hadn't fully developed as a setting. However, when you're 30-some, 40-some years into your career and writing stuff like this, that's troubling. And all I can guess is perhaps Michael Stackpole took severe brain trauma, or had a stroke, or a tumor, or some other horrible thing that happened. Or perhaps he died years ago and his kid just used his dad's name to write this? I don't know. It actually makes me wonder if the older books that I usually praised, the Rogue Squadron saga, was not nearly as good as I thought it was. And yes, I know Karan Horn is essentially a Gary Stew, which means, yes, even his terrible tropes from BattleTech made their way into Star Wars. I referenced how this was the worst book I'd ever read in my BattleTech faction briefing on the Kell Hounds, and I stand by it. While I'm sure there are pieces of fiction that are worse than this, I have yet to come across them. So let's break down Kell Hounds Ascendant and explain why this is so terrible. The story begins with the Kells arriving on Galatea. They get in trouble with the military and the mob from basically day one. This leads into the Kells needing to deal with these problems while also trying to develop their own mercenary unit. Also during this time, we get hyper cringe. We get young Morgan Kell meeting young Yorinaga Kurita, and Morgan Kell predicting that Mallory's world is where the Combine will attack, because apparently he can see the future. As the story progresses, the Kells trick both the Mafia and the military into sabotaging each other, which allows Patrick Kell to win a duel that was fixed in favor of his opponent. This leads us into the second novella, which features the Kells dealing with cult members of the Church of Jesus Magnificent. This involves the crew heading out to the farmlands of Galatea. In the process, Patrick Kell dives on top of a child to save that child from a bomb, while Morgan Kell is visiting his favorite prostitute. No, that actually happened. It gets worse because we are told Morgan shows worry about Patrick, yet we never actually see it in the book, because tell don't show. As the fights continue, they are able to recruit certain members from the church to be on their side, and make it look as if the cult leader was ascending into the heavens, rather than the assassination that they actually pull. The third novella begins on Tharkad, Morgan showing his prostitute girlfriend the Noggle Ring, that section I read earlier. By the way, that excerpt is only a small part of the cringe. We get our little Tharkad adventures as Patrick and Morgan meet Ian Davian. In the process, they're basically told that the Federated Sons and the Lyran Commonwealth want to set up war games on Zavi Java. We get Morgan and Ian and others messing around on Zavi Java for a while with no real progression, until the Ion Knights show up to raid the world. The Ion Knights are a group of dim-witted actors and mercenaries who are acting as pirates in order to take from the rich and give to the poor. The story was resolved rather easily, and the Ion Knights flee, having been found out. Our final book begins very slow, and you can tell that this was serialized because every few chapters, a character has to go and explain to you what happened in the previous few chapters. Vanessa is kidnapped, Morgan and Patrick are forced to do dirty jobs for a mysterious person. We do get some nice moments with Veronica's point of view as she is trying to figure out how to escape and eventually succumbing to Stockholm Syndrome. The story gets way too quick of a resolution that feels like it was really rushed, as if the story was supposed to be longer, but Michael was told, "You're out of words, dude. Finish it." And this leads us to an ending that's not really an ending, which makes you wonder, why did you read this in the first place? While the story does provide you with some insights into the early days of the Kell Hounds, for the most part, these are empty-calorie adventures that don't add up to much. You don't see the development of strategy or the Kells facing very difficult challenges that forged them into the men they would be in the late Third Succession War. Instead, what we see is easy victories. Everyone's invincible, nobody dies. It's relatively boring with almost no drama, which makes all the battles feel very hollow and empty. Overall, it is a poorly written story with a handful of interesting moments that will at least make you feel like you didn't waste your time entirely. When it comes to themes, we got 3 of them, and they're all horribly botched. First, we have family. Patrick is easily the whipping boy of this story. Patrick is always played up to be dumb, ineffectual, and nothing without the help of his brother. The fact that he would get bad grades just to make his brother look good shows you how weak of a character he really is, and how much of an egomaniac Morgan is. While we're supposed to think that these brothers really care about each other, what it comes down to is Morgan standing on a pedestal saying, "I am so great," and Patrick just going like, "Man, I wish I didn't suck." It's rather sad, because it would have been nice to see a fun brothers adventure, as we didn't get to see that in any of the major novels. The second theme is love, which is nice in concept, except for our love story is between a brutish moron of a mercenary and his empty-headed prostitute girlfriend. 2 hyper-shallow characters being in love is not something you can really grasp onto or care about. And the cringy dialogue of them flirting, as noted in the section I read, makes the relationship kind of feel gross. It's like watching your parents flirt with each other or something, and you're just like, ew, stop. There's also Patrick and his girlfriend, except for she's kind of forgotten about halfway through the 3rd novella, and is never referenced again. Did they break up? Are they still together? Who knows? Overall, the love theme just comes off bad, primarily because we don't care about these characters, and the romances just feel very hollow and empty, and are just page filler in order to reach a total word count. Finally, there's the religious theme, which begins in the 2nd novella. I like the idea of exploring religion in the BattleTech universe, especially with unique cults that are their own little thing, and using the religion against itself as a means by which to end the conflict was really interesting. In addition to that, when Vanessa is captured, you see her starting to go back to her religious roots. And this could have been a really great time for some character development and seeing her change as a person due to rediscovering her religion and finding a better path in life. Except for that's never properly resolved, it's just kind of there, a thing she does, and then it's easily forgotten. It is unfortunate because this is the only theme that really felt like they were doing something with it, especially as the Kell brothers occasionally bring up their Catholic heritage as well, and it is handled with the clumsiness of a bull in a china shop. We have some very shallow characters in this story. Morgan Kell is really there just to parade around how great he is and how he can never lose, and everyone is dumb compared to him. It makes the character unrelatable and not very likable, unless you have a thing for brain-dead power fantasy characters who have nothing else other than "I am so great." Patrick Kell is again used as a whipping boy in this story. It seems like every single story that is written about Patrick is him being kind of a loser, even when he wins. Patrick is shown to have skills and intellect, and you could tell that he probably could have been a really great leader if the writer allowed him to be. Instead, he just kind of comes off as his brother's simp, which is kind of pathetic. Then we have Vanessa, who is very attractive, and we are told smart, though we never see it in the text. She never helps the boys with their strategies, she never resolves any major problems using her brains. She really is just hot girl who everyone says is super awesome, yet we never actually see it. In addition to that, while she does get some character development, it requires her to be kidnapped and tortured in order to actually get some of that out of her, which is not a bad thing per se, but its resolution is horribly handled and begs for a follow-up story, which I hope will never happen. When it comes to our villains, we have some odd characters. We have Blizzard, who is essentially the head of the Mafia on Galatea, and his personality is essentially mwahahaha, I'm rich and evil. He really has very little outside of that, and he doesn't feel like much of a threat at any point, other than he occasionally sends thugs after Patrick or Morgan, who are always easily dispatched. Then we have Bishop Poor. He plays the generic evil clergyman that we've seen in 700 other things. There could have been something interesting to do with him and connecting him to the fact that Vanessa grew up in that cult, but nothing ever really happens. He's just kind of there. He has his basic messiah complex and is easily dispatched. Then we get Constantine. He is an actor who is the head of the Ion Knights. He is a comedic character, he is very likable, and I kind of wish he had a bigger part in the story. He has some of the biggest personality of any of the characters in this, and even has influence on the 4th book after he's been thrown in jail. The fact that he and his goofy band get curb stomped is kind of sad, because you grow to like them. You see them as these plucky underdogs, which I don't think was the intention of the writer. I think I was supposed to dislike this character, and yet he was funny and entertaining, and I thought that him and his troops would have made a better story, because I would have loved to have seen this ragtag group try to be Robin Hoods in order to get fame and fortune. Finally, we have the Count. He goes from the overconfident guy who funds the Ion Knights to a complete psychopath who tortures Vanessa. It feels like his personality just shifted in order to make the next book happen, and that's sloppy writing. We should have had things set up in his first appearance to show that he has an evil, darker side, instead of having that thrown in our face by the end of the 4th book because Michael Stackpole needed a villain. Finally, we have some minor characters that are of note. Tisha is Patrick's love interest. She's a skilled mechanic. She disappears after 2.5 books. She mostly is gone after the 1st book, but she does have occasional appearances in the 2nd and 3rd, but it feels like she was kind of an afterthought. Like, hey, Patrick should have a girlfriend, I guess. And it's unfortunate because she has some witty dialogue, and I kind of liked the character, but again, minor nothing character. Cat Wilson, he's back, but younger. He's a great character. He was a great character in the Warrior Trilogy, and he's a great character here. Too bad he's a minor character who really doesn't do all that much in the course of the stories. He gets a bigger role in the first story, and then gets diminished roles with each subsequent story, which is too bad, because again, he's great. Then we have Frost. He is a skilled sniper and a man with a heart of ice. A very cool character, and he stays chill when things get dangerous. All those puns notwithstanding, I did really like him and felt that we could have had a really cool Frost story. It'd be interesting following a sniper going and taking down commanders and taking down threats to his commander from the shadows. But he's still a minor person who's supposed to be used as like a mirror darkly of a warrior who's gone into the fray too many times and can no longer be redeemed. But again, there's no real payoff for that, just a lot of setup. But he is a decent anti-hero character who deserved more spotlight. Finally, Ian Davian. I gotta admit, I never really thought much about Ian Davian prior to this, but going through this story and kind of spending time with Ian Davian, I grew to really like him. I most certainly like him more than Hans, and the fact that he throws shade on the Kell brothers is kinda nice. It would have been great to just get a good Ian Davian story, but again, after story number 3, he's just kinda there in the background. The writing, boy, the writing. First off, we do get setup and payoff in the first book, which I do appreciate, because that's what books are supposed to do. Book 2 had a pretty good way of completing the story as well, but Book 2 has the problems of the fact that bombs occasionally hurt people. There's an explosion, and Patrick Kell saves a kid's life, but he was close enough to the explosion that he should have taken damage, but he's basically up on his feet a day later. Veronica also gets hit by one of the bombings as well and hurts her leg, but it doesn't really seem to affect her character in any sort of way. It doesn't lead to any growth. She has a cast for a little bit of time, and then it's quickly forgotten. I can't figure out what the point of the 3rd book even was. Why would you introduce comedy relief villains to then curb stomp them? Comedy villains should take themselves out. No one wants to see Team Rocket get horribly hurt. We just want to see them blast off again. It's funny, it's comedic, it's a joke. And yet, the Ion Knights are treated like they are the worst and most evil people ever and get horribly destroyed, with a bunch of them being killed or going to jail. Even though Constantine gets to get a little bit of a cameo in the next book, it still falls under the fact that these comedy characters are treated horribly for no real reason. I didn't find this farcical like A Night at the Lake, I just found this sad. It also makes the Kells look like bullies, which again, I don't think is the intention of the book. And the story doesn't seem to progress anything. While the first two dealt with things on Galatea, this one just exists as, hey, Morgan met Ian Davian once. And I'm like, cool, and? Which makes you wonder why this even warranted a book 4. And that book had a bunch of running in place, followed by some mild action, then a big time jump, where the Kells have instantly figured out who the bad guy is and go after him. And then an incredibly rushed resolution. Worse yet, that story begs for a part 5, and thank God we never got it. I can't believe anyone at Catalyst would have read these and said, oh yeah, this is worth publishing. While the first few were initially released on Battlecore, the fact that Book 4 was a headlining part of the early issues of Shrapnel is a sign that they had faith that this would be a selling point. What should have taken me a few weeks to read took me multiple months, and even made me not want to read BattleTech for a while. That's how much this hurt my love of BattleTech fiction. Let's get to our final verdict. I will say this, Michael Stackpole occasionally has some really good dialogue moments. Some of his best writing comes down to having very likable characters with very witty dialogue. Unfortunately, that's kind of hit and miss in this book, but there are those moments where I go, that was a great scene. I wish we could have more of that. However, the storytelling is just a mess. It feels like all these are just unrelated stories, but they all occur days apart from each other. It's as if I'm supposed to be really liking this adventure and being excited for what's next in the life of the Hounds, and instead it just feels like I'm being told a Shaggy Dog story. And considering the ending, it very much gets that Shaggy Dog feeling of, and so on. This book soured me on BattleTech books for a while, and I do not plan on rereading any Stackpole stuff for quite some time. That's why my final verdict for Hounds Ascendant is 1 out of 5. There are some good story moments, and occasional good dialogue. However, the themes are a mess of ideas. The writing just seems to fall apart near the end, and no one other than the author could have ever enjoyed this story. If you have read this book, I apologize. I wish I could have gotten my review out sooner to prevent that from happening. In order to get me back into enjoying BattleTech again, I did read a Blaine Pardoe book, but I would like some more suggestions so I can try to remember that there are good authors in the BattleTech universe. Let me know about some of your favorite books in the comments. Speaking of Blaine Pardoe books, I think it's about time I reviewed one of them. So when I get around to doing another BattleTech book review, it'll probably be Roar of Honor. Until next time, thank you for watching, and I'll see you at the tavern.